Easy peasy. Like most structures in Hyde, the Harbinger Embassy was built from stone. There was no mistaking its familiar stylized portal logo, even if this one was made from iridium instead of the usual brass. "I'll go in. You don't even have to worry about it," Nightingale said to Remy. She straightened her skirt, brushing away a little of the grime that seemed to coat everything in Hyde. Remy harumphed, folding her arms. "Good. I don't want any part of it." Zeke wrapped one arm around Remy's shoulder, looking up. "I'll stay with her. Call me if you need anything." Rook glanced once around the empty street, then turned. "I guess I'll go with you, Night, just in case." "In case of what?" Nightingale looked backward at the building, steady light streaming from its lower-story windows. There was no missing how clean it was compared to many of the other structures around it. "These are the Harbingers, foundation of modern society as we know it. No Harbingers, and eventually the whole world gets monstered to death. There's nowhere safer." Rook lowered his voice. "That's not the kind of backup I had in mind. If we had to fight them, I'd have more faith. But how much attention did you pay to politics and policy back at the Institute?" Nightingale frowned. "Point taken." They walked together up to the door. The interior, while cut from the same granite as everywhere else, had a vaulted ceiling with mirrors and windows to amplify the light. A little globe of earth doubled as a fountain in the center, and as it rotated, Nightingale could make out little lights scattered across it. A pair of individuals waited just inside, eyeing them from either side of the door. The Harbinger Embassy held guards not loyal to Alinea or any other country for that matter. The men looked rougher than a royal guard and much older, a trait most associated with those who had spent long times on Earth and away from Madara. Nightingale paused to stare for a moment too long. The guards looked like nothing she'd seen in Alinea. She'd heard stories about the Harbingers, those brave enough to travel back to Earth and survive its dangers. While studying in the Institute, Nightingale had rarely paid attention in classes that had no direct application to adventuring or survival. But the Harbingers always intrigued her. They were adventurers, but not in the dungeon-delving, loot-collecting sense. Instead, they stole something more precious to Madaran society. Children from Earth. Never aging seemed like a blessing to most, but it also meant that their kind could never have children, not while on Madara anyway. So Earth became the breeding ground for Madarans, and the Harbingers were the men and women willing to put in the legwork to make it all happen. Sounded easy to Nightingale at first, but she would have never guessed that the monsters that were feared the most resided on Earth. Self-proclaimed guardians of the realm, these godlike creatures didn't like humans taken. Nightingale shivered, remembering the depictions of the monsters in her textbooks. "Hey, let's go!" Rook shook Nightingale's shoulder, breaking her from her thoughts. "Yeah, sorry." Nightingale turned to make her way to the front desk. She knew enough about Harbingers to guess that her bloodline was their best chance of eliciting any help at all. Many of these people held themselves above Madaran issues. Nightingale walked around the fountain with the air of one with an appointment. There was a lounge on one side, but she ignored this in favor of a desk made entirely from polished granite, with a single man behind it. The man was stretched and hawkish, with a long, wild haircut that made him look like he was an old samurai. He was also one of the oldest Madarans Nightingale had ever seen. "Excuse me?" Nightingale didn't wait to be invited. She just pulled up the single chair and sat down in front of the desk. "I have a matter to bring to your attention, Mr." Rook took up place behind Nightingale, folding his arms and glowering. "Lyle," he spoke with a drawl, his words stretching a little. "The embassy is nearly closed. Whatever you need, be quick." "You haven't even asked who I am." Nightingale folded her arms, trying to imitate Lyle's scowl. He sneered. "I don't care who you are. State your business or get out." Nightingale cleared her throat. "My name is Nightingale Arson, and I've come to discover why the case with the Patel child is moving so slowly." Instead of frightened apologies, Lyle laughed. "The mysterious new scion of the Arson family, of course. And this man behind you must be King Balthazar himself. Tegan is more desperate than I thought if she's hired impersonators." Lyle reached down, fumbling with a drawer. A second later, he removed a folder, setting it down on the table in front of them. Nightingale could only make out the bright red stamp at the top. Case pending arbitration. She gave you the sob story, didn't she? I can only tell you what I told Tegan. Our contract with the foster mother was dissolved upon her death, and the Father from Earth refuses to turn over the child. Until this case receives arbitration, no harbinger can be dispatched to retrieve her. Nightingale grumbled. I require that a message be dispatched immediately to your regional headquarters. My family employs a number of harbingers on personal retainer. Assign them to the case. The harbinger frowned. Sorry, stranger. Unless you can produce a letter to that effect sealed by Lady Arson herself, I must refuse. Rook cleared his throat. Perhaps there's another way. Whether you believe that this is Nightingale Arson or not, we're talented adventurers. If you won't honor his request, maybe there's something we can do for you. Lyle's mannerisms changed at once. A sneer of satisfaction gradually transformed into something more primal. Greed. There is something, Lyle muttered. It would be quite dangerous, however. You could be killed. Fine, Nightingale blurted. We can do dangerous. All right, then. Lyle reached out, scooping up the file and tucking it away again. Travel down the eastern road until you reach the warning signs. Ignore them and take the trail to Corpse Pond. Bring me the flower of the collector there, and I'll... He shrugged one shoulder. Clear away the red tape. He rose, turning his back on them and heading towards the rear office door. Why is it called the Corpse Pond? Rick asked. Because it's full of corpses, Lyle replied. Obviously.